I welcome you for this React Prerequisites for Beginners Part 1 training course. Web Application Architecture. In monolithic front-end, back-end database, they all reside on the same server. In client server, front-end, it resides on separate server. Back-end and database, they too reside on separate server. In microservices, front-end, it resides on separate server. Order, cart, items, they are all microservices, they all run on containers. Front-end, it interacts with microservices through the API gateway. In micro front-end, order, cart, items, they are all micro front-ends. They interact with microservices, order, cart, item through the API gateway. Order micro front-end, it interacts with order microservice through the API gateway. Similarly, the other micro front-ends interacts with their respective microservices through the API gateway. Let us now see in detail. This is monolithic application architecture. A monolithic application is typically an application system in which all the relevant modules are packaged together as a single deployable unit of execution. For example, it might be a Java web application archive running on Tomcat or an ASP.NET application running on IIS server. A typical monolithic application uses a layered design with separate layers for user interface, application logic, and data access. These monolithic applications start small but tend to grow over time to meet the business needs. At some point, as new features are added, a monolithic application can begin to suffer from the following problems. The individual parts of the system cannot be scaled independently because they are all tightly coupled. It is hard to maintain the code because of tight coupling and hidden dependencies. Testing becomes harder, increasing the probability of introducing vulnerabilities. This is client-server architecture. A client is a computer that connects to a server in order to access resources or services. Client acts as the front end and server acts as the back end. Clients are in charge of delivering the user with data, whereas servers are in charge of storing and managing the data. Server is responsible for hosting, managing, and delivering services to the clients. This is front end and back end. Front end, where you are able to see the user interface on your laptop or on your mobile. Back end, which contains business logic layer, data access layer, and both reside on a server. Front end and back end. The terms front end and back end refers to the separation of concerns between the presentation layer, front end, and the data access layer, back end, of a piece of software or the physical infrastructure or hardware. The front end communicates with back end through the application programming interface. An application programming interface is a way for two or more computer programs to communicate with each other. In the case of web or mobile frontends, the API is often based on HTTP request or response. The API is sometimes designed using the backend for frontend pattern that serves responses to ease the processing on the front-end side. So in this diagram on the left hand side, you are able to see the problem. The same backend service is shared among the desktop, computer and mobile application. On the right hand side, you are able to see the solution. You are having a separate backend service for desktop and separate backend service for mobile applications. So this is called backend for front-end pattern. Create separate backend services to be consumed by specific front-end application or interfaces. This pattern is useful when you want to avoid customizing a single backend for multiple interfaces. Create one backend per user interface. Fine-tune the behavior and performance of each backend to best match the needs of the front-end environment without worrying about affecting other front-end experiences. Here you are able to see the front-end frameworks: React, Ember, Backbone.js, Vue.js, Angular, Foundation. The front end is built using a combination of technologies such as HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. The front end is the part of the website users can see and interact with, such as the graphical user interface, such as navigating menus, text, images, videos, etc. Front end focuses on the following: markup and web languages such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and ancillary libraries commonly used in those languages such as SASS or jQuery. Asynchronous request handling and AJAX, single page applications, web performance, responsive web design, cross-browser compatibility issues and workarounds, end-to-end testing with headless browser, build automation to transform and bundle JavaScript files, reduce image size and other processes using tools such as Webpack and Gulp.js, search engine optimization, accessibility concerns, basic usage of image editing tools such as GIMP or Photoshop, and user interface. Front-end frameworks, traditional web application. In traditional web application, the whole page on the front end is refreshed and reloaded for every request by the user. Front-end frameworks, single page application. In single page application, the whole page on the front end is not refreshed and not reloaded for every request by the user. It updates only the required component. A single page application is a web application or website that interacts with the user by dynamically rewriting the current web page with new data from the web server, instead of the default method of a web browser loading entire new pages. The goal is faster transition that makes the website feel more like a native application. In a single page application, a page refresh never occurs. Instead, all necessary HTML, JavaScript and CSS code is either retried by the browser with a single page load, or the appropriate resources are dynamically loaded and added to the page as necessary, usually in response to user actions. JavaScript frameworks such as Angular.js, React.js, Backbone.js, Ember.js, Vue.js are some examples for developing single page applications. Gmail, Facebook, Trello, Google Maps, etc. all are single page applications that offer an outstanding user experience in the browser with no page reloading. Backend frameworks. Backend means working on server-side software, which focuses on everything you can't see on a website. Backend ensures the website performs correctly, focusing on database, backend business logic, application programming interface, architecture, and servers. They use code that helps browser communicate with databases to store, update, search, read, and delete data. Backend programming languages used are Ruby, PHP, Java, C#, and Python. These programming languages often run on frameworks like Laravel, Spring Boot, ASP.NET, Ruby on Rails that simplify the web development process. You can see here the backend frameworks: Ruby on Rails, Cake PHP, Spring Boot, Django, ASP.NET, Express, Laravel, Node.js. Backend focuses on application business logic, responding requests to the frontend, application data access, caching, scalability, high availability, security concerns like authentication and authorization, data warehousing, data transformation. The next agenda is Web Application Architecture Terminologies Session 3. I thank you for participating in this lecture and see you soon in the next lecture.